how to make him worry about losing you. Now, in this video, you will discover some of my hacks that I designed that are highly effective and really work on the unconscious mind of a man and also foster long-term trust and confidence inside of yourself as well so that the dynamic is sustainable. Hey, Antia Boyd with Magnetize Your Man, and together with my husband Brody, which you've seen a lot of times on here, we've been helping thousands of successful women all over the world to get a committed, connected, and long-term relationship that they desire fast. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So number 5 is how to make him worry about losing you is how to own your shame shields. See, a man actually sort of knows how to control his woman where he's not worried about losing you because he knows exactly where you are at any given time and can put you in your place when you're actually reactive towards things that trigger shame inside of you. So for example, if he knows that you have a trigger towards you don't want to be ever considered selfish or you don't ever want to be considered arrogant. Well, then in moments when he's like, oh, I don't know where Susie stands right now, let me pull one of these triggers of her fear of being selfish or fear of being arrogant. And because you have a shame response to it, he's like, oh, okay, you're still in the same place, right? However, if you are able to own those shame shields, okay, that's incredible because that actually shows a man that you have this intrinsic confidence that he can control you. He doesn't know where you're at any given time. So for example, when I was dating this guy and he wanted to use one of those shame shields. By the way, we do this very unconscious, right? So no man is going out in a vicious way. Everyone would say no man. But, the majority of men does not go out in a vicious way and is saying, okay, let me control my woman and let me put her in her place. So this is all very unconscious. So this man wanted to particularly, put me back into that he knows where I'm at. And we were dating. And he also wanted some space. And so he actually used that, my sort of wound is to feel, let's say needy or clingy, right? So at the time I had a shame response to that. But because I had actually learned how to own my shame shields is when he told me that I kiss too much or I hug too much, I'm too affectionate, whatever the case may be, it was something like that, that I was simply to just respond to yes, I agree. And what else is new? Kind of a response because I didn't feel, oh my gosh, I need to now justify it or I feel so embarrassed or I deny it and I just pretend I'm not needy or I'm not clingy that a lot of women can go into. They can really go into sort of denying themselves, abandoning themselves, and of course, ultimately get abandoned by their man. Now, in this particular case, because I owned my shame shield, he actually exposed his, and that was actually he didn't want to feel uncomfortable. So he said, oh, no, I'm just joking. So he went into his shame shield of denial. And he totally backtracked. He said, oh, but this, no, I love exactly who you are and how much you hug and kiss. And it's great. I love that you're so affectionate. And he not only said that in that moment, but he actually pursued me for a long time, called me, texted me, all these things, checked in with me. And I think it's really because he's like, oh, I don't know where this woman's at, right? So I could lose her. So I better stay on my toes. Number 4 is increase your emotional range. Now, when men actually feel like, they're not afraid to lose you, is because you become very predictable. So they're kind of no, Mary's constantly, she's always collapsing into helplessness or into sadness. And There's just a very one-dimensional emotional expression from you, right? Instead of actually seeing like, oh, wait a minute, there's like a range of emotions. So I don't really know what I'm going to get today, right? Like, I don't know if, I'm going to get like the happy Mary, or if I get the sad Mary, or if I get the angry Mary, or if I get the exhilarated Mary, and so, but it has to be authentic. And so what I mean by that is like it has to be embodied. It can't come from a manipulative place, right? But one of the things that people actually reported when they were surveyed about charismatic people, like what are some of the traits that charismatic people have, it was indeed a wide range of emotions. And so it really showed like, I don't really know who this person is, right? Is this person like more like the little girl and like very playful, right? Or is this like this fiery, like wild woman? And just so much range. It's so interesting to engage with every separate archetype, because it brings out a different archetype inside of the man. So that the man actually has what's called a state change. And so you see, when we have a state change, we go into action. When we have a state change, things become very interesting. You're very curious, very intrigued. And so that's, of course, the opposite of somebody taking you for granted. Now, but again, of course, I can see you already saying, well, that sounds so exhausting and I don't want to play any games. No, girlfriend, this energy is already inside of yourself. There's just a story that you have around it, a judgment that you have around it, like a coping mechanism that you have around it that keeps you from fully stepping and tapping into different parts of you. So, for example, if you've been like a very strong worker bee and you've always been like legit and you're very successful in your career, like my clients are, right? Then you got a lot of payoffs from that. So there's a lot of certainty, there's a lot of safety. And so it's kind of like, ooh, if I step into like a different energy of me that may or may not be there, I may not feel as safe because it's very much outside of my comfort zone, right? But it's interesting because we also want the man to step outside of his comfort zone as well. And we want him to share something, vulnerable, or something that he normally doesn't share, or, grow together with him. So if that's the kind of relationship that you want, is actually having a man who grows with you, then you also have to be willing to step outside of your comfort zone, do something different. And so I remember when I actually stepped sort of into my wild woman, I just really feel sort of like that fire, that rage, just that like this intensity inside of my body. Of course, there was some scariness that came with that. However, there's also a lot of magnetism that came with that as well, right? Because it is part of my colors, like it's part of my fabric, of my emotional fabric inside of myself. And again, a man becomes like very curious about that. And the best thing is, if he's like, wow, he experienced himself in a way he hasn't experienced himself before. Number 3 goes a little bit along with that, and that is own your weird. So there's this like dating show, it's called Dating Around. If you haven't watched it on Netflix, go ahead. I recommend it. But I really love it because it shows like either one woman or one man going on a date with a couple different men or women. By the way, Brody and I were working on a really exciting project. So we're going to bring something juicy to you guys as well here. But in this particular show, you can really see how people are sort of like tiptoeing and sort of, like, okay, I'm not going to say too much. I'm not going to say not enough, right? It's just sort of, being just right, because I don't want to, trip someone up, or I don't want somebody to think I'm weird. Oh, you're weird, girlfriend. You know what I mean? And so when you own your weird, what you consider weird, this may be actually really fascinating and interesting to a man, or it may open up conversations that you wouldn't otherwise have. So one of the weird things that I did back in the day when I did speed dating, it was so fun, but I got a little bored. So I said, I have to do something different. So I said, you know what? If you were an animal, what would you be and why? And so it's kind of like own your weird, right? Because you can just be so playful with that, right? I would be a Scorpio, and you have to be careful that I don't sting you. Or I would be, I got like such fun answers from guys. Like, guys are so fun. But like, you also have to give them the opportunity to show that to you. It's actually so creative. I got so many different answers from guys, like from parrots to, of course, a predictable lion, to a dog, to, whatever. And then you're like, I don't know if I like that answer, right? But you can also see if somebody can kind of hang with you and kind of joke with you and just kind of, you know what I mean? Do something different, right? And so it's kind of like improv, if you've ever done an improv class. But when you own your weird, like, you become like really magnetic to the right man, because it's sort of that particular, texture and color that he's looking for. He's looking for that like authentic and real and raw and feminine. It's like self-expression. And he actually doesn't care if it's like weird or whatever it is. When I met my husband Brody, I would do like the chicken dance, I would do a fish dance, I would just make up so many silly things. And my husband really loved it because, for one, again, it caused a state change inside of himself. He's like, what the heck is happening? But also, like, he got to actually like really see, oh, what is happening inside of me? What do I want to express? When you guys kind of do that dance together in life, and you enjoy all the different perspectives, that's when marriage, relationships become like really fun, and you explore different levels of yourself. And also, by the way, just as a side note, because I hear this a lot from women when they come to me, you actually avoid finding out about things that he was hiding from you later. And the reason why is because you create this authentic, transparent atmosphere without telling him, hey, tell me what to tell me. You can tell me anything, we can have this honest relationship. Like, no, you're actually showing it to him. You're actually handing him a resume. And so his nervous system is saying, oh, where else can I be more honest? Or where else can I be more myself? Or where else do I want to explore something different? And this is a woman I can actually share that with, right? So it's actually like a golden key that sort of really unlocks that deepest level of intimacy. And that's also what puts you apart from so many other women, because, like, other women he may relate to on like one level, but not on another. You're connecting on all levels when you are stepping into this particular energy and own your weird, do weird things. When I met my husband, another thing I did is, because I come from Germany. So originally, we live here in San Diego, but originally, we were, I used like some sort of like German mottos, and but they didn't make any sense in English. And so he would just bounce off them, and it would be like hilarious if you watch some of our super old videos together. Absolutely funny. And so, you turn sort of like your mess into your message, right? You don't try to be perfect, because people, like, they admire perfect people, but they fall in love with imperfect people. So if you show like, oh, that's a little odd, you know what I mean? But it's like so adorable about this person. Like, actually, that's what I love, the quirks about this person. Number 2 is share your concerns early and authentically. Now we're going to tap a little bit into a part that's more, that's a little bit more quote unquote serious. And that is actually a queen sets boundaries early. So what I hear from a lot of women when they come to me is that, they didn't say anything in the beginning because they wanted to keep things light. And, there's this whole like sort of like feminine teaching, like feminine teaching schools out there, that are saying, just keep it light, just keep it fluffy. And, just the first 3 months, just, I don't believe in any of that. Because so what happens is you're actually setting up an unconscious expectation in a man, like how the relationship goes, that's actually not sustainable. It's so unreasonable. And then when you come in like 3 months later and tell him like, oh, by the way, what you mentioned about, your belief about rescuing animals, or what you mentioned about, eating meat, or what you mentioned about whatever this, actually, I don't like that. I actually never liked that. But, I wanted to keep it light and fluffy the first 3 months. The man's going to be like, wait, hold on. Who am I dating? Am I dating Gabby, or am I dating, like, who am I dating? Am I dating the person that I met, or am I dating the person now? And that causes mistrust. That's also where men start to distance themselves, because the confused mind says no, right? So at the end of the day, we have this part inside of our brain that wants to protect yourself when you get mixed messages, because you don't know what is on the other side of those mixed messages. Okay, so what you want to do instead is actually really authentically ask the questions. You know what I mean? If you can share something with him. And by the way, I personally love that, because when you think about, you really want to make sure that your man is never in a defensive state. Because when he's in a defensive state, when you bring something up, it's never going to be conducive. Like, it's not going to go anywhere, and it's definitely not going to translate into any changed actions that you would like, right? And also, like, for you to actually speak into what feels edgy from the get-go and say, let's say, how you feel, or maybe even understand that you don't even know how you feel. And this is one part of the work that we do here at Magnetize You Men, helping you actually identify how you feel. Not describing how you feel, but what is the actual feeling, like, that actually lands for men. It makes actually a massive impact. And I know Brody's been on here so many times, and he always talks about all this and powerful work that he's done with men for 10 years and working on the deepest intense fears and insecurities that men have, right? And so there's certain ways how you actually get to a man's heart. What is like just really being able to feel into the authentic emotion that you feel, whatever the raw and real emotion is. And it's interesting, when I was able to actually do that with my husband, he actually fully responded to me. And I think also that's why men, before I met Brody, responded to me as well, because the energy was right, you see? Because when you have the right energy, you can say the wrong thing. You could actually say the wrong thing. You're like, I didn't even know what I was saying. You know what I mean? It sounded like Swahili mixed with French, mixed with Italian. Like, I don't even know. You know what I mean? If you understood what I was saying, but you still end up with the right outcome. And the reason why is because nervous systems speak to each other, right? So when your energy is congruent, the words is such a very tiny, small percentage of your communication, right? Like the energy, your body language, your sound of voice is 1,000,000 times more impactful than the words that you use. So that's why share your concerns early and authentically. He knows where you're at. Men have actually reported back to us that they love when they know where the woman is at. And that oftentimes leads to them like proposing to them. Several men said that. The reason why I actually end up proposing to her is because I know where she's at. I know how to make her happy. I know what strategies I have to employ. You know what I mean? To make her feel safe again, and so on and so forth. So it makes a man feel like he's capable of providing for you, and for making you happy, for supporting you. Number one, and you may not like to hear that, especially if you're more an anxious attachment style or a fearful avoidant attachment style, is detach from future projection. Okay, so here's a story from 2008, or I think 2000, something like that. So I dated this guy, and he lived in Chicago. I lived in LA at the time, I think. And, we're just kind of messaging back and forth on one of those like dating sites for like maybe a couple weeks. And I, of course, had so many future projections that he's in love with me and that he's the right one. And my mom would leave me voice messages and saying like, oh, I think he's your soulmate. But in reality, we hadn't even met. We had maybe a handful of calls for like maybe 30 minutes. And that's it, right? So I just had such a small, like, impression of who he is, of his archetypes, of his life, of his perspectives. But the rest I just projected onto him. Like, that didn't serve me at all because, of course, once he actually stopped communicating with me, imagine that, because I became so anxious and I became, more needy. And he's like, what the heck? We've been just talking for a couple of weeks, I don't even know who you are. And he actually backtracked and he ended up being probably more on the avoidance side anyways. But because I had projected so much onto it, for me, there was so much more on the line. So for me, I almost went through a grief process of a lost life. But that life was never even supposed to become that life. There was not even a possibility that this could become the life that I wanted, the desire that I wanted, like whatever, moving in together with him, going on trips with him, whatever we visualize as women, right? And so what you want to do instead is when you notice, like, let's say you're just going on a first date or a second date and you notice like, oh gosh, I'm so excited for the third date, and you're already projecting into the future, and he's already telling you that he's introducing you to his parents or whatever the case may be, is like really sort of visualizing as if you're pulling yourself back. And you're really seeing, okay, hold on a second, what has actually happened? Okay, well, let's remove all the stories and all the interpretations and all the wishful thinking and all of that. And then you see, well, wait a minute, we actually just texted 3 times, and actually it wasn't even a long thread. And actually I texted like way more than him. He sent me like, 1 sentence and I sent him a novel, to which he then responded with an even shorter sentence. And out of a sudden, everything becomes so clear. The veil is being lifted, so that's what can happen. And you also trust yourself more, because what actually happens when we attach, we become anxious. And the reason why we become anxious is because we kind of know that if you were to visualize like a projector back in the day, right? We don't use that anymore. Like you were projecting something onto the wall. And so, but your brain actually knows unconsciously that it's a projection. So it gets really anxious because the brain's already waiting for the rejection or for the abandonment or disappointment going to happen, because your brain unconsciously knows that it's a projection. But if you're able to remove yourself from that, then you're actually like, okay, I'm in here, I'm in the now, I'm taking one step at a time. And so that's what's going to be really helpful for you to actually stay also like interesting in his eyes, because he knows that this is a woman who has 2 feet on the ground, and who actually also like takes the time to get to know him and not just project some sort of boyfriend, a relationship vision into the future that may have nothing to do with him, and he may feel like you just want to fill a gap. All right, so we're about to hop into Q&A, because that's the nice thing about live streams here. So you can start popping your comments and questions into the chat. And I just want to let you guys know, if you are looking for a deep connected long-term relationship, then take our free Magnetize Your Man quiz to get the relationship you desire. Or you can, of course, click on the link in our bio or the comments below, or simply hop on over to magnetizeyourman.com. And I already see the comments coming in. So let's see what we got here. All right. Awesome. Laura just said, I got engaged. This is amazing. Laura, fantastic. And Shauna said, what did it say? Congratulations on your engagement. How great for you. Where did your fiance pop the question? Well, we've been actually married for 10 years, Shauna. um, but yeah, thanks. It's always like good to continue to visualize getting engaged over and over again. And my husband, actually, he proposed to me at a Thai restaurant. Thai is my favorite food. And it was not so much like where he proposed to me, it was more the timing. I love that you bring that up, Shauna, because I was actually the biggest biatch the night before. And so I was not expecting it at all. Now, I actually knew the engagement was coming because he had asked me 2 months prior, which was Valentine's Day, for my ring size. If any men are watching, I highly recommend not asking your girlfriend for their ring size because now we get a little bit, caught up with expectations. So, anyways, yeah, so I was like in total shock when he proposed to me. But the beautiful thing is, right, like he was really marrying me for my beat, not because I did something or I didn't do something. And I think that's like a huge distinction there because otherwise we women could just like really keep track. Oh, now I'm not worthy anymore. Oh, now I went into this particular energy. Now that he's definitely not going to like that. That's not how love works, And he told me later on that he had already decided that he's going to propose to me. He had already decided that months earlier. And so usually, unless there's like a massive disruption, not just like being a biatch, I guess, the night before, usually a man doesn't change his mind with that. But yeah, thanks for that. Leslie, my boyfriend came to mine after work tonight. I had made chili yesterday, but I had went for a nap today, and my daughter has ate half the sauce, not realizing it was for him. When I told him, he picked his phone up and phoned his aunt and asked her if she had dinner yet and if she wanted to phone a Chinese. I feel so confused and hurt as he seems nice. Am I being too sensitive? Okay. So I'm not sure if that's like a communication breakdown, meaning like he called his aunt because he's now seeing if she has dinner for him. So whoever has the dinner, that's the one who wins the prize, right? And so there's like a couple different pieces, right? Of course, there's of course the for one, there's like the option to actually hold on. Let me just kind of. Okay, let's see. Let's take this down here. So, of course, there's like the option to like actually share your feelings with him. And this is like exactly the point I was bringing up, my last point, right? Which was, sorry, the second to last point, which was about like speak up about your desires, concerns authentically from the get-go, and just really letting him know, like what happened, that obviously it wasn't on purpose. And, and yeah, and just really letting him know that you're doing your best. And hopefully he's not just like your boyfriend because you're making dinner for him, because that would be very disappointing. This would actually point to a more little boy, as opposed to saying, here's the options that we would have, Leslie, right? And one would be, okay, let's order some food. We can just order some Chinese food or whatever, right? So I hope he's not cheap, and that's why he's contacted his aunt so he can eat for free at his aunt's. I hope that's not the case, okay? Because otherwise that's not a quality man. Or he could also be like, hey, let's make something together. You always have something in the refrigerator that you can, do, or whatever it is, right? So there's always like many roads that lead to Rome if you're willing. And maybe one thing you'll learn today from the video is turn your mess into your message. So how can this actually become like one of the most incredible, fun stories that you get to tell your friends? And my friend just had her 5-year wedding anniversary, like vow renewal, right? And so they got to like share some stories. And so how can even like this, like a downfall like this, so to say, or like a disappointment, lead to like, oh, no problem. How are we going to turn it around is in this and this way. How can you turn that trigger into a treasure moment. There's always something you can do. You can go to the grocery store, grab a rotisserie chicken. There's always something how you can turn it around. And so, but, I don't know. I have definitely questions about him and his expectations and him, not being that flexible, or whether why he is together with you. So, hope that was helpful for you. Thank you. Hi, beautiful lady. Okay, Mercedes. I don't know that questions. I would have to ask my team that. Hajer, I need to ask a question, please. I feel I need to receive advice. Okay, let's see if I can help you. Let's see what's happening here. Okay, so Hajer is, I'm Algerian, living in Algeria. My man, we are in relationship. He's from Italy, working here in Algeria. So we started meeting and knowing each other seriously since March 2023. Okay. And then before 2023, he was a playful guy. Then after he asked for a chance of being together, he started changing, stopped talking to other girls, women, whatever he had in the past. And then I'm sure you're still typing, Hajer. While you do that, I'm going to answer real quick Pat's question. Now, I'm 69 and my boyfriend is 70. His wife of 45 years died last May. So their 48-year-old daughter said he's dating too fast. By the way, I've heard this over and over again, Pat. So this is not the first time that I read this. She doesn't speak to me. In my eyes, she wants to control him. Holidays, I will probably not be invited. How do I overlook the daughter? So, yeah, I actually seen that like a lot of, we just had somebody go, it was just in our program a couple months ago. And she's also like in a happy relationship with her boyfriend. And the kids were not like that supportive around that whole situation, right? And so, one thing that I always recommend is, of course, encouraging, like communicating to your boyfriend the impact that it has on you. And ideally, it would actually be that your boyfriend sets boundaries with his daughter. And so, but of course, the wife of 45 years, so, she's been, obviously the daughter, has known her whole life and all of that, right? So it gets like really, really tricky in that moment. But I would say in your situation is like communicate the emotional impact it has on you towards your boyfriend. And then also any other boundaries that you can set potentially with her, because I don't know if overlooking is the right way, because I truly believe that it's about engaging, because it's not about you personally, Pat, okay? It's about, that obviously the daughter has a loyalty towards her mom who died, who she's probably deeply grieving over. And she probably also expects her dad to deeply grieve over her. So she probably can't understand, like, why is dad not deeply grieving over her the way I'm deeply grieving over her? You know what I mean? Because they've been together, married for 45 years and all these things, right? So she thinks like, it may just be a phase, or, he doesn't know what he's doing. There's something. So I would approach it more from that angle, and continue to, when it talks about holidays, again, continue to communicate with your boyfriend. And then it's your boyfriend's job, to talk to his daughter about it. And be like, what, look, I get that you're grieving and I get that you're doing all of that. But, the biggest piece is that you understand that I want to be happy again. You know what I mean? That I want to build a life again. I can't just live like this for the rest of my life. I'm ready to have a partnership again. So I hope that was helpful for you. Okay. Hajia, if you can just kind of summarize your question, because it's like it's really long and it's like it gets really lost here. Okay, so let's see. Next one. Content. The guy I'm dating is really pulling back this week after opening up about his ex and sharing more in depth about some things on his mind. Not sure what to do. Initiate something with communication, probably. Be silent, share. Okay. Well, so part of it is content. After what is actually more in depth about some things on his mind. So, what can happen is, and I just talked about this with someone else yesterday, is about that men can hit when they're like emotionally more unavailable, like an intimacy threshold. And so what I mean by that is like when they almost have like a hangover, right? Like a vulnerability hangover after sharing something like really vulnerable. And so it's almost like feels like, okay, now I need some space. Okay. Because maybe opening up about something about his ex triggered something inside of him where he felt maybe shame, maybe because he felt he made himself responsible for the relationship not working out, or maybe he made some mistakes, or maybe he got rejected by her, or, whatever it is, right? Or he has guilt or something. But there was some undesirable emotion that was coming up for him when he was opening up about his ex. And so, men process different than women, right? Especially the more masculine they are. So, like maybe as you got off the phone, he started to feel that emotional ripple effect sort of in his nervous system. And then depending on his strategy, because every man has different strategies, right? His may be pulling back, his may be disconnecting. So he actually feels safe again, because maybe he doesn't feel safe because it's too vulnerable, too shame-provoking, too charged, and he doesn't really know what to do with that, right? Because remember, we have sort of like this this ecosystem inside of ourselves, this emotional ecosystem, but it depends on how well it's developed inside of someone if they know how to navigate like a triggering emotion, a vulnerable emotion, something that feels like exposing. So all you can do to honor your self-content is like actually communicate and communicate your emotions, communicate how that makes you feel, the impact it has on you, the story that you tell yourself, and essentially asking him for help with that, because that's all you can do is like really appeal to that part inside of him that wants to be there for you. But of course, that's only going to work if he's somewhat willing to engage, If there's still nothing happening after that, you just need to give him that space and then communicate once he comes back, the impact that it had on you, and really working out on what compromises or, in which way he can stay open with you. Maybe it's not like in a normal way how he normally communicates with you, but maybe it's just like, just communicating that he needs maybe a day space, and it has nothing to do with you, right? So that he learns to communicate with you so that you feel safe, right? Because I know that if he was to communicate with you in a way that's like, hey, something got triggered inside of me, and it has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with what we talked about yesterday, and I just need space to process that. It has nothing to do with you, and you know what I mean? Once I process that through, like I'll come back to you, then you would feel different, right? So it's just more about the fact that it's like that he's not handling this right, that he's just kind of, shutting down, just going into survival mechanism, fight or flight, and not really coming from a place that's responsive as opposed to reactive. So I hope that makes sense for you. Okay. And then Sandra said, I just got over being scared to share my heart and feelings. I just started sharing with men I care about how they make me feel, even if it's not text. It's there and it's me. and I gotta be me, right? The ones meant to be in my life will stay, and the ones that don't like it, there's the door. I want to just be me and not worry about all the things. Then fear takes place instead of love. I put myself out there by just sharing, and feels good and not expecting anything back. Feels good. Okay, awesome. Yeah, and that's so true, because at the end of the day, all you have is yourself, right? You spend the rest of your life with. But also, the only thing that I would say is, Sandra, how can you do it? How can you do it in, when somebody says there's the door, that's still a little defensive. You know what I mean? So how can you still do it like with an open heart? So for example, like when this guy, I don't know if you were here when I shared about, how long you've been on the video, but when this guy, like 14 years ago, the story that I shared, that who said that I was too affectionate or hugged too much or kissed too much or something like that, I could have said, well, that's me, take it or leave it, right? But then that would have been actually a shame shield, because that would have been actually like a shame shield of attack. So that would have been actually like, my heart would actually be sort of slowly actually kind of closing, you know what I mean? And so then in that moment, I'm actually not fully emotionally available to myself. And so then, unfortunately, that would give breathing ground to attracting another man who's also not quite emotionally available. So if I want to become a magnet to an emotionally available man, to a congruent man, a grounded man, a masculine man, who his actions, his words match, he at least communicates when he needs space, and so on, right? Then I gotta make sure, like, oh, am I closing my heart right now? So how you could do it instead is like, okay, so the people that don't like it, well, they're on a different path, right? So just using like sort of different frames, as opposed to there's the door. There's the door is like really harsh, and I used to be like that too, like just pretty harsh. And so then I was surprised that I was attracting men who, were emotionally unavailable or inconsistent or conflicted inside of themselves. But the second I shifted that and I was able to reframe it in a way that's like less harsh, where we like say, you know what, like I'm gonna be myself, I'm gonna communicate my emotions the best I can. And if that's too triggering for some men, then we're not a fit, right? Like it's not the right match. We're on different paths. So you see how that's like very different, because I still don't judge the man. Because the other piece also is like sort of when we judge the man, that's like, it's like an emasculation, obviously, right? And, women think like, well, once the man has proven himself that he's not worth of me, honoring him, then I can emasculate him. I don't know if I agree with that. Like, I actually agree if we can always frame it in a way where we're like almost quote unquote, never in an emasculating state. So never have this feeling like we need to judge or we need to castrate men. Then it becomes like an unconscious competence. And we don't have to consciously remind ourselves all the time of willpower. Okay, so now I need to say that I appreciate him. And now I need to say that he's my hero. And now I need to say, right? So that would be like so mechanic as opposed to organic. So where we want to get you in is like that it's organic, that it feels natural, that it feels sustainable, that it feels trustworthy, right? Because he can also tell if that's your true energy, or if you're just putting on sort of a mask, something you learned from a program. And what men will say in that time then, and we heard that from our women too, who come originally to us, is the men will actually say like, are you in some program right now? What strategy are you using on me? Like, you never want to be in this kind of position, okay? Because that's going to cause further mistrust. So, awesome. So, okay, so let's see. Okay, why do I put ads into my live streams? Oh, Raquel, I have nothing to do with that. That's probably like the YouTube gods. But I didn't even know that I have ads on my live streams. So thanks for that. My husband may have known. So, okay. Tammy sad to hear that. Let me know if you have a question about that. My ex told me he loves me, but then he dumped me, which then also goes back to, of course, words and actions don't match. So, it's if I were to turn the volume down, does the storyline still make sense, right? So if I need to actually if I don't see, oh, this man hasn't communicated with her in like 3 weeks, but she's devastated. So imagine you look at his screen right now, Tammy, right? And so, and you have no sound. Maybe back in whatever when we started to have films, but we didn't have sound. So something like that, potentially like Charlie Chaplin or something like that. And so you're like, wait a minute. So this woman meets this guy, then 3 weeks go by of like nothing, but you see her constantly crying and constantly being anxious about you would be like, wait, I'm so confused. Like, what is happening? You know what I mean? I mean, she met this guy like 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, but he doesn't, I don't see him. So I don't know why she's so upset or why she's talking with her girlfriends about this guy, right? So that would be equaling, okay, he tells you that he loves you, but his actions are clearly not showing it. And so one thing I always teach my women here at Magnetize Man is we'll see. And so again, not like I just told Sandra, not in a sort of condescending way, but just like, we'll see, thanks for the compliment, we'll see, right? I received that, and the rest, we'll see. So, so that's like another piece of advice that I have here. Now, Charlene said, I have a guy that I dated in high school come back into my life recently. By the way, hear a story all the time, Charlene. We live on different sides of the US, which, by the way, is a pattern, right? So when it's a pattern, that's great. So it's not personal, so we can do something different. We've been talking every day over the phone or FaceTime. I'm a little nervous because he seems to have found love with me quick. I have strong feelings also, but I don't know if this is a red flag. His last long-term relationship was last December, and it was a 7-year relationship. He's talking about building a home for us and me moving. I'm just getting out of a 20-year marriage and then I lost you. Okay. So it sounds like you're actually the one who's like slightly more concerned about being willing, to lean into that level of intimacy. And he's talking about building a home, of you guys moving. You're just getting out of a 20-year marriage. So it could be, I can see the rest of what you wrote here. And that's the comment section. It could be that he's that you just need like some space, or maybe you don't want to move in with him. I don't know. I hear like some women say when they come to me in their like 50s or early 60s that they want to have another relationship, but they don't necessarily want to live together with the guy. Sometimes they do, but oftentimes they also don't, because they still want to have their space. They still have sort of like their schedules, and they still have like their whole things going in their life. So they don't want to be like sort of, just like, almost like getting back into another marriage, right? So I would assume you've been talking every day over the phone, that you obviously like him too, because otherwise I would have assumed that you would do that. And you said you have strong feelings also, yeah, but you said that you don't know if this is a red flag. And sometimes we have to see things through, right? Now, if I were to wonder, and this is funny, I just did a reaction video. It's not out yet. It's going to be out probably next week. But there's a super short clip. It's like 10 seconds long. And it's basically just like, people always say, pay attention to red flags, but is it really that red though? It's kind of like almost like with a wink, flirting and trying to convince you to paint the red flags green. And so in this particular case, like it's more about like really seeing, so if I were to consider something to be a red flag, then I would ask myself, like logically, I think it comes from logic, but actually it comes from my nervous system. And so why would my nervous system be concerned that it could be a red flag? That could tell you a lot, Charlene, right? So I'm very curious about that piece, because what I've seen, I just talked with a woman yesterday, is like we actually uncovered like this guy just, shifted out of his total tone after 8 months, and was a totally different person, and I hear this all the time. And then we actually, as we just kind of like peel back the onion just a little bit, right? Because so that's not a lot of time to do that, but just a little bit, we uncover like 3 red flags, right? So it's like, okay, have there been other red flags that you've been noticing in the communication with him that may be more like an orange flag, or that may be feeling more like a pink flag? But, there's something where you feel like, there was something else he mentioned that made me feel uneasy, or there's another way how he showed up, or just the fact that he wants to move fast, right? And so now, falling in love quickly, in that sense, I just had my friends get married after knowing each other literally their first date. First, I'm talking 90 days, right? So I do believe that, when people are meant to be, like, they can recognize each other fast too. However, I feel it's like intuitively, the fact that you asked this question makes me feel like that you need like some space. Not like take space from him or anything like that, right? But just be like, hey, let's pace it. And this is one thing that I teach my women all the time, is really in phase 3, once we're actually attracted the right man into our life, and he actually gives us everything we want, like our love language, words of affirmation, whatever it is, or, quality time. Now it's actually pacing. And the reason why it's pacing, Charlene, is because your nervous system needs to slowly learn to feel safe with that new dynamic. So it could be more something like that, right? That your system is saying, instead of like being water hosed down with like so much love that your nervous system can't respond to, because it just goes into probably freeze and overwhelm or disassociation. Instead, just really visualizing sort of like a Baskin Robbins spoon, and feeling like, okay, how can we potentially create, scenarios in our relationship where, you feel more like you're being spoon-fed the attention, and then you can actually, quote unquote, digest it, also known as actually like trust it, and really be with it, and actually feel how that feels different in your body than it felt in your 20-year marriage. Because sometimes someone comes to me and they're like, well, my 20-year marriage was, the beginning was the same, but then it shifted, or then he became abusive, or then 6 years later we found out that he's an alcoholic, or, or whatever the case may be, right? So it almost could be more something like that, where it's more like your system needs time to just digest, integrate, trust, ground this new dynamic that you have with him. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I feel like connect more emotionally, can open up to him, say anything to him. Couldn't do that with my ex-husband. Yeah, so it could be more something like that, All right, and Stephanie, yeah, you're so welcome, Charlene. Stephanie, I got divorced off about 7 years ago after a 25-year relationship. I haven't been on a regular date since my divorce. I'm now more ready than ever to date again. And my question is, if I go out for a night and talk to more than one guy, is that okay? I live in Mexico and I'm from Belgium. If I go out for a for a night and talk to more than one guy, is that okay? Oh, 100%. So one rule that I have about that, Stephanie, is that the only rule is like you want to treat other people you want to be treated. Meaning, if you were to sense that a man feels like it's not about like tonight or one night, But that's about like, as you get to know different men and you start to feel like, one man is starting to be more under the impression that you're his girlfriend or you're committed, that if you were to sense that, right, then it would be sort of like your responsibility. Because I did that with Brody too, because I was seeing other men when I met him originally. And I just said, hey, just so you know, I'm seeing other guys, right? Like, I just want to be super honest and authentic and transparent, right? Because that's what I believe in. That's what I want to create in my relationships, have like a trusting and authentic relationship in my life, or relationships in my life, right? And he's like, oh my gosh, you are? Like, I'm not seeing anyone. Okay, so that was really great, right? Because then it was like, and he's like, I don't want you to see anyone else. But that's going to be a little bit down the road for you, Stephanie. And just for now, I'm just like, enjoy yourself. Usually it's assumed that when you're dating, just dating that particular guy. But again, like I said, the second you kind of sense like, or there's some questions that you feel like are kind of like inquisitive about other guys, I just really believe in total honesty and transparency. You know what I mean? Because you don't owe a man anything until he claims you. And claiming would really be, hey, are you seeing other men? Because I don't want you to. And then you get to reconsider, like, do I like this man enough to commit, to give myself to him, and to not see other men. So I hope that's helpful for you. All right, Charlene, yeah, you're so welcome. All right, ladies, well, this is it for today. It's been such a pleasure. I'll be back. And, just want to kind of like ring it off. We just hit 200,000 here on YouTube, and we just want to, give a huge shout out and thank you so much for all of your support and all of your questions and comments and receptions, and giving us inspirations on what kind of videos to shoot, what questions to answer. We love all of your feedback. That's what makes the channel, is you guys. So we want to really thank you guys so much for following us for all those years. So if you're new to our channel, say hi as well in the comment section. And again, if you haven't done so already, take our free Magnetize Your Man quiz by hopping over to magnetizeyourman.com. Awesome. All right. Lots of love, ladies. Mwah. Enjoy your Labor Day weekend. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.